Okay, let's go over section 6, due diligence. So 6A, inspection period. Buyer's inspection period shall be 10 days or whatever we put in here, 3, 4, 5, or 15 days after contract acceptance. During the inspection period, buyer, at buyer's expense, shall 1. Conduct all desired physical, environmental, and other types of inspections and investigations to determine the value and condition of the premises. 2. They shall make inquiries and consult government agencies, lenders, insurance agents, architects, and other appropriate persons and entities concerning the suitability of the premises and the surrounding areas. 3. They shall investigate applicable building, zoning, fire, health, and safety codes to determine any potential hazards, violations, or defects in the premises. And 4, verify any material multiple listing service or MLS information. If the presence of sex offenders in the vicinity or the occurrence of a disease, natural death, suicide, homicide, or other crime on or in the vicinity is a material matter to the buyer, it must be investigated by the buyer during the inspection period. The buyer shall keep the premises free and clear of all liens, shall indemnify and hold seller harmless from all liability, claims, demands, damages, and costs, and shall repair all damages arising from inspections. Buyer shall provide seller and brokers, upon receipt at no cost, copies of all inspection reports concerning the premises obtained by the buyer. The buyer is advised to consult the Arizona Department of Real Estate Buyer's Advisory to assist in buyer's due diligence inspections and investigations. So the buyer's advisory is a separate disclosure form that you typically get with this. I'll go over that in another video. It's very, very good for looking up statistics in neighborhoods, such as crime statistics, sex offenders, all kinds of things like that. 6B, square footage. Buyer is aware that any reference to the square footage of the premises, both the real property, land, and improvements thereon, is approximate. If the square footage is a material matter to the buyer, it must be investigated during the inspection period. 6C, wood destroying organisms or insect inspection. If current or past wood destroying organisms or insects such as termites are a material matter to the buyer, these issues must be investigated during the inspection period. The buyer shall order and pay for all wood destroying organisms or insect inspections performed during the inspection period. If the lender requires an updated wood destroying organism or insect inspection report prior to close of escrow, it will be performed at the buyer's expense. 6D, flood hazard. Flood hazard designations or the cost of flood hazard insurance shall be determined by the buyer during the inspection period. If the premises are situated in an area identified as having any special flood hazards by any government entity, the lender may require the purchase of flood hazard insurance. Special flood hazards may also affect the ability to encumber or improve the premises. Okay, insurance. If homeowner's insurance is a material matter to the buyer, buyer shall apply for and obtain written confirmation of the availability and the cost of homeowner's insurance for the premises from the buyer's insurance company during the inspection period. Buyer understands that any homeowner's fire, casualty, flood, or other insurance desired by the buyer or required by the lender shall be in place at close of escrow. Sewer or on-site waste management treatment. The premises are connected to, and then we check one of the boxes, either a sewer system, conventional septic system, or alternative system. If a sewer connection is a material matter to the buyer, it must be investigated during the inspection period. If the premises are served by a conventional septic or alternative system, the AAR on-site wastewater treatment facility addendum is incorporated herein by reference. Swimming pool barrier regulations. During the inspection period, buyer agrees to investigate all applicable state, county, and municipal swimming pool barrier regulations and agrees to comply with and pay all costs of compliance with said regulations prior to occupying the premises. Unless otherwise agreed in writing, if the premises contains a swimming pool, the buyer acknowledges receipt of the Arizona Department of Health Services approved private pool safety notice. Buyer acknowledgement. Buyer recognizes and acknowledges and agrees that the brokers are not qualified nor licensed to conduct due diligence with respect to the premises or surrounding area. Buyer is instructed to consult with qualified licensed professionals to assist in buyer's due diligence efforts because conducting due diligence with respect to the premises and the surrounding area is beyond the scope of brokers' expertise and licensing. Buyer expressly releases and holds harmless brokers from liability for any defects or conditions that could have been discovered by inspection or investigation. The inspection period notice. Prior to expiration of the inspection period, buyer shall deliver to the seller a signed notice of any items disapproved. AAR's buyer inspection notice and seller's response, also called the BINSR form, is available for this purpose. Buyer shall conduct all desired inspections and investigations prior to delivering such notice to the seller, and all inspection period items disapproved shall be provided in a single notice. In other words, we get one bite at the apple. We can't continue to go back for them for additional things to be fixed. We've got one chance to ask for everything. Buyer's disapproval. If the buyer, in buyer's sole discretion, disapproves of items as allowed herein, buyer shall deliver to seller a signed notice of the items disapproved and state in the notice that the buyer elects to either immediately cancel the contract, in which case, if the buyer's inspection notice specifies disapproval of items as allowed herein, the earnest money shall be released to the buyer. If the buyer's notice fails to specify items disapproved as allowed herein, the cancellation will remain in effect, but the buyer has failed to comply with the provision of this contract, and the seller may deliver to buyer a cure notice as required by Section 7A, which we'll get to. If buyer fails to cure their non-compliance within 3 days after the delivery of such notice, buyer shall be in breach, and seller shall be entitled to the earnest money. If prior to expiration of the cure notice, buyer delivers notice specifying items disapproved as allowed herein, buyer shall be entitled to return of the earnest money. Okay, so that's one thing they could do. They could cancel the contract, or they could provide the seller an opportunity to correct the items disapproved, in which case the seller shall respond in writing within 5 days, or however many days we put in here, after delivery to the seller of buyer's notice of items disapproved. Seller's failure to respond to buyer in writing within the specified time period shall conclusively be deemed seller's refusal to correct any of the items disapproved. If the seller agrees in writing to correct items disapproved, seller shall correct all the items, complete any repairs in a workmanlike manner, and deliver any paid receipts evidencing the corrections and repairs to the buyer within 3 days or blank days prior to the close of escrow date. If the seller is unwilling or unable to correct any of the items disapproved, buyer may cancel this contract within 5 days after delivery of seller's response or after expiration of the time for seller's response, whichever occurs first. And the earnest money shall be released to the buyer. If the buyer does not cancel this contract within 5 days as provided, the buyer shall close escrow without correction of those items that the seller has not agreed to in writing. Verbal discussions will not extend these time periods. Only a written agreement signed by both parties will extend response times or cancellation rights. Buyer's failure to give notice of disapproval of items or cancellation of this contract within the specified time period shall conclusively be deemed buyer's election to proceed with the transaction without corrections of any disapproved items. Okay, the home warranty. Buyer and seller are advised to investigate the various home warranty plans available for purchase. The parties acknowledge that different home warranty plans have different coverage options, exclusions, limitations, service fees, and most plans exclude pre-existing conditions. So this box right here, 293, we check this box if we're going to purchase a home warranty ordered by either the buyer or the seller. Typically we do ordered by the buyer with the following optional coverage. So if there's any optional coverage we put in here, I like to do comprehensive. To be issued by, and then the company right in here. If we haven't looked at them yet, we'll put to be determined at a cost not to exceed whatever the dollar amount to be paid for by the buyer, the seller, or split evenly between buyer and seller. Or we can check this box down here. Buyer declines the purchase of a home warranty. I would always recommend a purchase of a home warranty just to be on the safe side. I've had them throughout the course of my real estate career and buying real estate myself, and I've used them quite a bit. Walkthroughs. Seller grants buyer and buyer's inspectors reasonable access to conduct walkthroughs of the premises for the purpose of satisfying buyer that any corrections or repairs agreed to by the seller have been completed, and the premises are in substantially the same condition as of the date of the contract acceptance. If buyer does not conduct such walkthroughs, buyer releases seller and brokers from liability or defects that could have been discovered. Seller's responsibility regarding inspections and walkthroughs. Seller shall make the premises available for all inspections and walkthroughs upon reasonable notice by buyer. Seller shall, at seller's expense, have all the utilities on, including any propane, until close of escrow to enable buyer to conduct these inspections and walkthroughs. So have to keep utilities on, okay? And the final section, 6N, IRS and FIRPTA reporting. FIRPTA is the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. It provides that if a seller is a foreign person, a buyer of residential real property must withhold federal income taxes up to 15% of the purchase price unless an exception applies. If FIRPTA is applicable and buyer fails to withhold, buyer may be held liable for the tax. Buyer agrees to perform any acts reasonable or necessary to comply with FIRPTA and IRS reporting requirements, and buyer is responsible for obtaining independent legal and tax advice. So that's all of Section 6. We'll move on to Section 7.